The Tempestus Scions, also known more informally as Stormtroopers, are elite highly trained soldiers which commonly act as shock troops for the Astra Militarum. Despite often being seconded to fight alongside Militarum forces, the Tempestus Scions are, in actuality, part of an organisation known as the Ordo Tempestus, which in itself is a sub-faction of the Administratum, granting Tempestus Scions a greater deal of autonomy and independence when compared to the Imperial Guard as a whole. As a result of being amongst the very best that humanity has to offer, Tempestus Scions will often be tasked with carrying out missions that are far too important or dangerous to be entrusted to mere guardsmen. To aid in this, the war gear utilised by Scions, which include the likes of Hellguns, Omni-Shield helms and Carapace armour, is of a much higher quality than that available to the average guardsman. Unlike the Imperial Guard, whose forces are often, though not always, drawn from the ranks of a world's planetary defence force, Tempestus Scions are recruited almost exclusively from the colleges of the Scholar Progenium. These institutions, which are themselves a combination of orphanage, church and military academy, will train their students to not only become accomplished soldiers, but instill within them an intense, if not fanatical devotion to the tenets of the Imperial cult, with all students coming to view the God Emperor as their spiritual father figure. While the majority of cadets within any given scholar will inevitably be inducted into the ranks of the Tempestus Scions, some students will be specially selected to undergo additional training in order to become commissars, inquisitors, or even, in the case of female students, battle sisters of the Adeptus Sororitas. Much like the Astra Militarum, the Stormtroopers of the Ordo Tempestus are themselves divided into multiple regiments, with each regiment operating within one of the Imperium's many theatres of war. Of these various regiments, the most unusual is, quite possibly, that of the 68th Deltic Lions. The men and women of the 68th Deltic Lions are unique in that they demonstrate a nigh unparalleled resistance, if not outright immunity, to the majority of known contagions and pathogens. While other regiments may find themselves decimated or even destroyed upon worlds that have been ravaged by plagues and toxins, the Deltic Lions will regularly emerge from such hellish locations, mostly, if not completely unscathed. Because of their ability to withstand even the most virulent of diseases, the 68th Deltic Lions are often employed by the Inquisitors of the Ordo Malleus in order to combat against the forces of Nurgle, the chaos god of sickness, pestilence and decay. Indeed, the Deltic Lions have amassed an impressive tally of victories against Nurgle's followers, with perhaps their greatest triumph being against a Chaos Space Marine warband known as the Purge, which had launched an assault against the Deltic Lions' home scholar within the Scarus sector. Despite the superior strength, toughness and firepower of the traitorous Astartes, the Deltic Lions were able to outwit and outmaneuver their corrupted foes, luring and trapping most of the Purge within an icy ravine before catching them in a devastating crossfire. Little do the Deltic Lions realize, however, is that their seemingly unnatural immunity to disease has drawn the curiosity of Nurgle himself, with the Plague God having become fascinated by the regiment's ability to endure his most potent and deadliest concoctions. This then leads to an obvious question. What causes this particular regiment of the Deltic Lions to be so resistant to disease? The first possibility is that the 68th Deltic Lions was subjected to a series of biological augmentations in order to increase the potency of their own natural immune systems. While biological augmentations are perhaps most commonly associated with the warriors of the Adeptus Astartes, who are engineered to become what are effectively super soldiers, they are not the sole organization within the Imperium to make use of such enhancements. For example, the agents of the Officio Assassinorum are known to undergo a series of surgical augmentations in order to make them faster, stronger, and tougher with lightning-quick reactions and reflexes. It is these surgical enhancements which, when combined with their intensive training, makes Imperial assassins into killing machines which are more than a match for even an experienced, battle-hardened space marine. Another example is shown with Hector Rex, an inquisitorial lord of the Ordo who himself underwent extensive genetic augmentation, which resulted in him being transformed into a powerful giant of a man. Because the 68th Deltic Lions are known to be frequently utilized by the Ordo for the purpose of combating against the followers of Nurgle, it's not entirely unreasonable to assume that the Inquisition could have subjected the regiments to bouts of surgical enhancement in order for them to carry out their duties without fear of succumbing to sickness or malady. But if this were the case, then one would need to ask as to why such augmentations were granted solely to a singular regiment of stormtroopers as opposed to the entire Ordo Tempestus as a whole. Another possibility is that the immunity to disease demonstrated by the Deltic Lions is, somewhat ironically, due to some kind of alien pathogen. While pathogens and viruses will typically affect the human body by, to grossly oversimplify, making them ill via the penetration or bonding of cells, it's not entirely unreasonable to assume that there could exist some type of alien pathogen which works in an inverse manner. Instead of incapacitating or slowly killing those that it infects, such a theoretical pathogen could in fact, for lack of a better term, supercharge the immune system of its host, either intentionally through some form of mutually beneficial symbiosis, or even as an unforeseen side effect of interacting with human physiology, which would indeed be both foreign and alien to such an organism. Admittedly, however, there is little else to support such an idea, intriguing though it may be. Alternatively, perhaps the Deltic Lions simply have a naturally stronger immune system when compared to other baseline humans. After all, it has been shown time and again that humans will develop distinctive traits and characteristics depending upon their world of origin. Such traits can range from relatively minor ones, such as the purple eyes sported by Cadians, to adaptations so extreme that they result in what is effectively an entirely new subspecies of humanity, with such individuals being known collectively as abhumans. With this in mind, given that the Deltic Lions originate from a scholar located upon a frozen world within the Scarus sector, it's certainly possible that, during their youth, cadets sent to live upon this world will naturally develop a stronger immune system over time, for one reason or another, similar to how populations living at higher altitudes will produce higher concentrations of hemoglobin within their bloodstreams to compensate for atmospheric pressures and reduced oxygen levels. Or perhaps the immunity to disease demonstrated by the Deltic Lions isn't the result of adaptation or surgical enhancement, but instead the result of divine intervention. Because the home scholar of the Deltic Lions, as mentioned earlier, is situated on a world within the Scarus sector, which in itself is fairly close, galactically speaking, to the warp space rift known as the Eye of Terror, could it be possible that some sort of benevolent entity is using its power to render nearby worlds and, in turn their populations, more resistant to disease? While such an idea may seem incredibly unlikely, there does exist a being who could very well be responsible for such an act: the goddess Isha. Isha is the Eldari goddess of healing and fertility, and is one of only 3 gods to survive the events of the Fall, which not only brought about the creation of the Eye of Terror and the downfall of the Eldari Dominion, but also saw the majority of the Eldari pantheon being destroyed and devoured by Slaanesh, the newly awakened chaos god of excess, pleasure, and pain. As Slaanesh prepared to consume Isha and absorb her power, the goddess's cries for aid would be answered by, somewhat surprisingly, none other than Nurgle, and the 2 ruinous powers would engage in a brief but apocalyptically violent duel. Upon emerging as the victor, Nurgle would claim Isha for himself, keeping the goddess confined within a cage situated at the heart of his fetid, rotting garden. The plague god would in time grow fond of his new companion in his own twisted way, showing his affection by force-feeding Isha of his newest creations in order to test their potency. What Nurgle fails to realize, however, is that whenever he is busy tending to his cauldron, Isha uses her power to bestow the various mortal races of the galaxy, be they Eldari, human, Tau or otherwise, with the knowledge on how to cure themselves of her would-be suitors' poxes and plagues. With this in mind, it's certainly not impossible that Isha could have utilised a small portion of her power to render the men and women of the Deltic Lions immune to all of Nurgle's creations. Though if this were the case, then one has to wonder as to why Isha chose to give her blessings to humanity of all races as opposed to the Eldari, a species who, according to legend, are said to be her literal children. Whatever the truth may be, the 68th Deltic Lions will no doubt continue to wage war within the most toxic and pestilential of war zones, even if the secrets to their immunity to disease are likely to remain a mystery to all, save perhaps for Isha herself. What do you think? Leave a comment below, and thanks for watching.